It's a Mercury 25 horsepower BigFoot. This motor is a little bit unusual in the way you disconnect the shifting mechanism to remove the lower unit. We're going to remove the lower unit to service the water pump, and on many outboards, as you start to take it apart, right in this vicinity in here, there's a connector that allows you to disconnect the shift mechanism. But on the 25 BigFoot, it's a little bit of an oddball. It's very simple when you know how, but difficult to... On the 25 BigFoot, under the cowling, up at the top of the motor, up by the power head, there is a horizontal shift shaft right here. On that horizontal shift shaft, there's a little retainer clip right there. And that little retainer clip has a pin on the back side, as it was drawn here, that goes and connects to a vertical shift rod that connects down to the bottom of the lower unit to actually do the shifting. The way we disconnect the shift mechanism so we can remove the lower unit is to unclip this clip, flip it up a little bit, and slide it over to the side. The trick is finding that clip. Okay, let's have a look at some of the manuals. We'll see what they have to say about this. This is the Climber manual. It actually misses the whole thing. It's a good general purpose manual for Mercury motors. Ditto for the C-Lock, but those two manuals miss out on some very important specific BigFoot moves. Here's the official Mercury BigFoot 25 4-stroke manual, and I downloaded this for free on the internet, but now you would think you'd have the final say if you had that, but it throws you some curves too. Here's the page on reconnecting, not disconnecting, but reconnecting this linkage. The bottom one applies to the 25 BigFoot. This diagram up here, which shows the linkage connection about where you'd expect to see it, somewhere down on the vertical gear shaft housing, doesn't apply to the BigFoot at all. It doesn't belong in this manual, and yet there it is in this manual, just to confuse you. Here's a parts diagram of the 25 BigFoot. Here is the vertical shift rod. It also shows a couple of washers, which may or may not exist at the top of the shift rod or possibly further down. We have to be careful not to lose track of those. They may be at the top, and if they are, they're in a tough spot to find if you drop them. So we'll watch out for that. Here's a parts diagram that shows the general arrangement of the linkages up inside the power head. This up here has to do with the throttle linkage and the carburetor. We'll see this curly-Q familiar looking piece. We'll see this rod coming along here, and then that rod comes into the bell crank here. You're going to see a washer and a cotter pin here that go through this rod to connect it to the bell crank. And then this horizontal shift shaft. Above that we have the clip that we're after to disconnect the shift shaft. Over here is a 3-part leaf spring that connects into these detents. And this whole thing goes into these pivots that are in this casting. This casting sort of looks like a carburetor, but it's not a carburetor. It's part of the crankcase actually. But here is the bell crank thing. There's the cotter pin and washer for connecting that link. Here's the horizontal shift shaft, and you'll see that goes into these pivot points. These things make up our leaf spring, and it's this guy right here, that retaining clip, that we're going to unhook, and we're going to slide over to the starboard side of the motor to disconnect the horizontal shift shaft. This is the link and the instructions that you need to find and download the official Mercury BigFoot 25 horse 4-stroke manual. Okay, we're going to show you where this shift shaft linkage hangs out in this power head so that you can disconnect it, so that you can remove the lower unit. In here we can see the cable linkages from the remote control for throttle and shifter, and then above it there's this linkage here, which is the shift linkage that goes into a horizontal shift shaft. There's sort of a bell crank thing here. It goes to a shaft that goes horizontally across inside the engine in there. Right here we have a couple of screw holes that show up well that are on a bracket that this whole assembly goes into, and then inside of that, in there, my finger's poking, is where you actually will find this little clip retainer that you have to remove. These bright spots, those are part of a bracket that holds the pivot that holds the horizontal shift shaft, and in behind that bracket you can see a tab. I'm putting my little stick in on the end of that tab. Very difficult to see, but that is the retaining clip. What you need to do is put the gear shifter in neutral, then you flip this clip up. It doesn't take much, that's all there is, it's flipped up now. Then you pull the clip to starboard all the way to release the shift shaft. Pulling that clip to starboard is a little bit difficult for my fat fingers, so I have this simple little bent piece of coat hanger here, and I'm going to use that to get in there and pull that clip. Here are a couple of parts that are bound to fall out. You'll find them on the ground probably if you're not careful. This is a raw water intake screen. It fits in the lower unit here and is held in place mostly by the zinc trim tab. And it's going to probably fall out when you take out the zinc trim tab. It may stick there long enough just so you think it's attached, and then it won't. And then here we have this washer that goes up inside here where we took out that stop nut. That washer could be a one that'll drive you crazy, because some of the postings I've seen online talk about a washer on the shift rod that drops out that has to do with locking the motor down when you're in reverse. This is an aftermarket water pump repair kit for the 25 BigFoot that actually includes the top gasket, the bottom gasket, the wear plate, the impeller, and the water tubes and a few other little minor washers that you need. I have not found any other source of a water pump repair kit for this motor that actually includes all the parts. You can order them individually from other sources, but this kit, this 12045 kit, which replaces the Mercury 821354 Alpha 2, seems to be the hot ticket. Here's our lower unit, water pump serviced and replaced. It's got to go back into the engine. The engine's tilted up. You can see we've got three things we got to keep in line here. One is the drive shaft, one is the shift shaft, and the other is a water tube. So that's going to be a handful to get it all in there. And no doubt there's going to be some jiggering with the drive shaft to get the splines to line up. On other units you can put them in gear and turn it a little bit with a prop turn, but in this one we have to mate up with that horizontal shift shaft, and it calls for it to be in neutral, so we'll have to jigger with that a little bit. To that end, I'm making sure that I have nearby at my right hand, because I'm right-handed, the bolts to make fast once I get the unit in place. I'll probably be balancing it on one knee and reaching out with my right hand and getting that first bolt started, so it'll hold it in place. Okay, the lower unit went back on. It only took 2 tries. What I found is, as I was putting it on, that as it went in place, you could feel when the upper drive shafts started to touch the upper seals, and you wanted to be careful not to damage the upper seals, so be gentle getting lined up and past them. And of course, the first try the splines didn't line up, but I can't turn the shaft by turning the prop because it's in neutral, which means the prop spins freely both ways. So I had to pull it back out again, put it in gear briefly, very carefully turn the prop just enough so that I was just turning one spline, and those splines are very small, a little over 1/16 of an inch, I'd guess, maybe 3/32. So I was careful just to turn just a spline width as I turned the prop, put it back in neutral and try again, and it went together on the second try. But I've only put the one bolt in because I think what I'll do is try and hook up that horizontal shift shaft and make sure I'm all set to go there before I bolt everything up tight. I reached in through this space here with my long screwdriver, where I was able to touch that clip and move it, and it went back into place remarkably easily. And now we can see that we have shifting. We put it in forward gear and verify that the prop will spin one way and not the other. Here it is ratcheting. There it is solid. Then to neutral, and it should spin both ways. And here it is spinning both ways. And just check reverse. No reason to believe it wouldn't work. In reverse, we shouldn't be able to spin it at all. There it is. So we're getting good shifting. Test drum's looking good. Got water coming out of the toe tail. So, see whether it shifts. We have forward gear. We have neutral. And we have reverse. So, job well done.